All right, let's talk about it. The crypto market feels like it's on one of those roller coasters that only goes down, and yeah, it's got everybody feeling a little queasy. But the real question is this just a dip, or is something much, much bigger happening here? Today, we're going to cut right through all that noise and look at what's really going on, how the big corporate players are defending their turf, the signals politicians are sending, and the wild reason why bad news for the economy might just be great news for your crypto.
Okay, let's just rip the Band-Aid off. The market has taken a serious punch, dropping a whopping 28% from its last peak. And look, that's not just a little correction, that's a major, major downturn.
And a drop that big, well, it's got a name. We're officially in a bear market. A 28% fall isn't just a bad week, It shows that the entire feeling out there has shifted from we're going to the moon to, well, a whole lot of pessimism.
So when the market gets choppy like this, what do the big fish do? Let's take a look at one of the biggest whales in the space, MicroStrategy. How they're reacting right now says a lot.
Yeah, the very same company that was famous for gobbling up Bitcoin like it was going out of style is suddenly slamming on the brakes. And that sudden change of pace has analysts pretty convinced they're getting ready for a long, cold crypto winter.
And this chart, wow, it really tells the story. I mean, look at that. At their peak, they were buying up over 130,000 Bitcoin. But now, the projection for late next year has that number just cratering to around 9,000. That's not just tapping the brakes. That's pulling the emergency stop.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. The folks at CryptoQuant are saying this is a very deliberate defensive play. They're building what's basically a 20-month financial cushion. They're getting ready to ride out a long and potentially tough bear market.
And as if the market wasn't enough to deal with, MicroStrategy is also facing pressure from the outside. They could get kicked out of some major stock indexes, which just adds another huge headache and forces them to rethink everything.
But, corporate strategy is only one piece of this giant puzzle. What's happening in the political world is just as huge. And right now, there are some really fascinating moves happening in Washington that could totally change the game for crypto.
You're going to want to keep a close eye on the U.S. Federal Reserve. A change in leadership there could be massive. On one hand, you've got the current chair, Jerome Powell, who's, let's just say, not a huge fan of crypto. But one of the guys who might replace him, Kevin Hassett, is seen as being way more friendly to the industry. That one change could flip U.S. policy from hostile to helpful.
And speaking of politics, you gotta see this. U.S. Senator Cynthia Lummis just drops this super cryptic picture of Ben Franklin holding a Bitcoin, saying big things are coming. Naturally, the internet went wild. Could the U.S. government? Could they actually be thinking about buying Bitcoin for a national reserve? The speculation is just off the charts.
Okay, let's get into this next part, because this is where things get really weird. Right now, bad news for the economy is actually being treated as good news by the markets. It sounds completely backwards, I know. So let's break down why that's happening. So what is the deal here? How on earth can things like job losses or factories slowing down actually cause a rally for stocks and for crypto? It just doesn't seem to make sense, right?
Well, it's actually a pretty simple chain reaction when you think about it. First, some bad economic news comes out. That makes investors bet that the Fed is going to have to step in and cut interest rates to help things out. And that promise of cheaper money in the future makes riskier assets like stocks, like Bitcoin, look way more attractive, so prices start to climb.
And look, this isn't just some theory. The market is literally betting the farm on it. Traders are now 100% certain we're getting a rate cut in December. And they're even starting to price in a 30% chance of another one in January. The bet is on.
Okay, so you've got corporations playing defense, politicians stirring the pot, and this bizarre bad news is good news logic, all swirling around at the same time. So what does that actually mean for performance? Let's take a quick look at the scoreboard and see who's winning and who's losing. And the results are really interesting. Money is flowing into smaller companies, into gold, and into Bitcoin. At the same time, we're seeing money flow out of the US dollar and those giant tech stocks, the Magnificent Seven like Microsoft. It's a classic rotation as investors start hunting for what's next.
And if we look under the hood at some other signals, the VIX, which is basically the market's fear gauge, has dropped way down. That means investors are getting less worried about huge price swings. Plus, people are getting a break with gas prices hitting a 2-year low. And inside the crypto world, here's a fun one. Ethereum is actually outperforming Bitcoin right now, which is a really interesting trend to keep an eye on.
So here we are, standing at a massive crossroads. You've got huge companies playing defense, you've got politicians dropping these cryptic hints, and you've got a market that's literally cheering for bad news. It all leaves us with one giant question. What is the next big signal we should all be looking for? What's the thing that's finally going to show us which way this whole market is really headed? If you found this explainer helpful, be sure to smash that like button and subscribe so you don't miss your next Daily Edge. More news in our Telegram channel in the first comment. See you next time.